Spring School Board, you are live.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, LTV. We were just in an exec session beforehand where we were going over contractual items. And at this time at 7:10, I would like to call this regular board meeting to order. Julie, would you do roll call, please?
Where'd she go?
Where'd she go? That's a good question. Julie, you still there? Okay. All right. I will go ahead and do roll call. Dave Conlon.
Here.
Tim Frazier.
Here.
Barbara Dayton here. Amy Rivera is absent, and Pat Brabant is absent as well. LTV, do you have a flag to put up for us?
Yes.
Great. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance then, please.
I pledge allegiance
To
the flag
of
the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Hopefully Julie will be back with us soon. We are amending our agenda for this evening to have a quick discussion with LTV regarding cameras and microphones. So Jason, if you could walk us through the options that you sent to us to help make our meetings a little easier to understand when they're being shown on LTV.
Had to unmute myself. I'm not used to being on this part of the system. So okay. I'm gonna quickly share my screen. So I was talking to my executive director, Mike Clark, and we also had we have a few other people here who we were picking their brains with. And basically, this isn't so much of a sales pitch to you guys. I'm just laying out some options. There are definitely other options and other ways to go, but we just want to let you know what we see as a viable alternative. One of the things that's happening right now with Springs is that we're getting to these points where, you know, the Facebook portal device that we have, it's pretty good when everyone's kind of like, you know, in a smaller enclosed space, like a huddle space, like when we don't have audience interaction. We basically have, you know, the TV is right there, and then, you know, you guys are like maybe about 10, 12 feet, 15 feet. 15 feet seems about the right size. You're about that far away from it. And then when we get to the points where we get audiences back into there, and then you incorporate the podium and you incorporate in-room amplification, that's where things get a little wonky. So what we're talking about is on your screen, you should see these things, which are Bluetooth speakerphones. So they can be daisy chained. So I'll give you an example. So this is showing you two of them on a
sorry,
table.
Jason, I'm not actually seeing anything.
Give me a second. Here you go. Okay. Here you go. This is better. Yep. So this is two of these speakerphones, Bluetooth speakerphones, on a table. And what that would allow us to do is to take, for instance, people who are hybriding in either via Zoom or calling in through the conference call line, to have that be on a table near where the board is. And so you would hear them and they would be able to hear you. And that's without us screwing around with any of the, you know, any of the existing microphones and PA systems. Because in my experience, you know, like, the only other system that I have comparable to this, with replacing the microphones and the PAs, is the Town. And the Town is like, first off, it's hardwired, everything is set into place, and it was extremely expensive and hard. And also, it's hard for us to get those materials because of the global chip shortage. And that's from Shure, the main supplier. This is actually like right off the shelf, and we can kind of use these. and it's very adaptable, you know? So it's okay if you're meeting as a small huddle group during a work session, or whether it's a, you know, a large meeting where you're going to have people coming up to the podium and so forth and so on. Our goal is for everybody at home to be able to hear you and for you to be able to hear them. So we believe that this is, first off, our main focus. And I think this would be probably your first point of purchase, because it's 2 devices that are daisy chained together, and we can put them on a longer table in front of you guys. So, and also we can train up we can show your staff for like a general, you know, kind of like a boilerplate scenario of where you would put them for the maximum ability. And one of our technicians uses these really well. So that's our first one. Our second one is cameras. And this is kind of something that I was just looking into, where it would be nice if we had a laptop that was on that table in front of you. So we could have one camera facing the board, and then maybe one more camera plugged in via USB facing the podium. So, you know, that's the general goal. And I'm pretty sure that you all have like some sort of laptop that we can probably utilize, that you can utilize for these situations. Yeah. So anyway, that's the short and sweet.
Okay, well, thanks, Jason. Because when I was watching the meeting the other night, I realized how much noise interference there was from the audience who's sitting right in front of there. So while you were talking, it just occurred to me, what if we actually had the board table set up right near that TV have the microphones and cameras right there, and had the audience sitting back where the board table is behind us. So you would actually see the audience on the camera. And if we had the podium back there, then you could actually see people on the podium as well, but the board table would be closer to the microphone. Would that work?
It would be. Well, no, the problem would be that then I would lose the ability to see you. Like it would get to this weird, I mean, you could maybe set it up at like a 90-degree angle where you have the board there and then, you know, the podium there. Like maybe that's what you're saying. Like maybe like hypothetically. No,
I'm saying if we had like the U-shaped table like the board has set up directly in front of that TV, in front of the camera facing you. So, but the audience have to be at our back then, and the podium.
Yeah, it would be real. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I mean, you know, and then, you know, we'd see the back of people from the podium. You know, I mean,
no, we'd have the podium facing the camera. You'd see the people. We would all be facing the camera, like the board in front, maybe the podium behind us and the audience behind. So you wouldn't really be hearing, you know, people in the audience as they're moving in their chair or flipping their papers. But it would just be a completely reversed setup. And, you know, would that work before we spend money to do something?
You know what? I think it's worth trying out. I mean, I like the idea of trying it out. And at this point, if it works, then you've got a solution and you haven't spent any money. The only thing you've done is rearrange chairs. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, you know that you've exhausted a possibility and you've justified your cost.
Right. Okay. So those two, the microphones that you were talking about look very, so, okay. So we got a couple of options here. So we'll see, I'll talk to Julie about trying out the different setup.
I think that's a really cool idea. And again, it allows you to know for a fact that you've done your due diligence and you've exhausted a possibility. Awesome.
Okay. All right, Jason, thank you so much for getting us that information, and we will talk further about this.
Well, thank you all very much. Have a fantastic evening. Take care.
All right. Okay. Moving back to the scheduled portion of our evening. We have Jim Waiting from BBS here with us this evening to go over our 5-year facilities plan. And hi, Jim.
Hello. I'm going to need to have access to screen share so I could show, I guess, the PowerPoint. Who gives me that permission? Or do I have it already?
You should be able to do it.
I got it. Thank you. All right. So, very good.
Jim, for starters, I got to say that's an amazing view right there. Looking at the new, there we go. having the new
Yeah.
gym and everything on there. That's like a different aerial from what we've been used to historically. Looks great.
Yeah, we're gonna get that updated, so it'll show all the new pavement and everything, from a point a little bit after the grand opening. So, but yeah, the first time I guess we had done this presentation, it was only your first, the front part of the building, and then now basically from the same view, all that's been added since we've done our building condition survey. So we're only talking tonight about the building the way it existed 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, Jim,
So,
that's not our swimming pool there, is it?
What's that?
That's not our swimming pool, is it?
You don't get that swimming pool. That's not yours.
Oh, shucks.
We can find another home for someone out there for that. All right. So, yeah, I just want to kind of go over with you kind of where we started with the BCS and kind of where we are as of today, and go through the process, discuss a couple of the items relative to how we determine priority of items, what that all means, and where we're going to go forward from there. So I'm going to flip to the next page. So a building condition survey, we went out, and this is required by every 5 years you have this done to your building. So in 2020, August of 2020, we went out and we did the full building walkthrough. Myself and Fred Seba, who's an engineer, did the walk through all the spaces and met with the building staff to talk about things that were problematic or things that needed to be looked at carefully and evaluated to determine whether or not what needed to be done to repair, replace, preserve. So that takes about 2 or 3 days to do that walkthrough and evaluation. From there, we went back and compiled all our notes and our quantities of things that we found and estimated the cost for those items. And then we had to make a submission to the State Education Department. That was done in December of 2020, a year ago. And then we take that information and we compile it a little bit further into a 5-year capital plan, which is what the school districts use to plan ahead for future work that needs to be done on their facility. This part of the report isn't required by the state. They don't see this document. They only see the building condition survey. But the information that's contained within the BCS is essentially the same as what's in the 5-year capital plan. We just, for the 5-year capital plan, we go into a little more detail in terms of what needs to be done and when and in what in priority order and things. So it's a pretty comprehensive study. It encompassed the main building itself, the metal building, which at the time was 2 classrooms, and the SYA building. Although it's not owned by the school district, it is utilized for student and education purposes. So we had gone in there and we did a BCS for that building as well. And so that was the three main buildings that we had to examine. So we go into we walk through our buildings and we find out all the things that within the building that needs to be addressed. We have to come back and prioritize things. So the slide that I'll show you next will start breaking down the work into priorities. So I just wanted to give you a sense of what each priority involves or what it really means. So the priority 1 items, they are things related to health and safety, building code. I say violations, but building code issues, things that aren't correct. They may have been right at one time in code, but maybe should be brought up to code because they're now mandated by law. Anything that's structurally an issue, things that are falling down, can pose an imminent threat to the health and safety of anybody, staff, student, visitors. So those things are the most critical that get addressed in our priority 1 items. Priority 2 items, those are things that we've looked at and they start showing signs of visible severe deterioration, things that are out of warranty, beyond repair, alterations sometimes to program needs. If you had a space that was once, let's say it was a typing classroom, and now it has to be upgraded to become a computer lab. I mean, that's adjustment in the way things are done and how programs are delivered. Sometimes those items are critical to the functionality and the education program, and they need to be addressed immediately because they got to keep up with technology. A simple description of a thing that will be a visible area of deterioration will be like structural cracks, cracks in the veneer of a building. It's not falling down, but it's cracking in a way that's allowing water to enter the building. So that should be addressed. That's a visible sign of a deterioration. Priority 3 items, it stops the progression of deterioration. So if we have a roof that's needs to be addressed, they can do certain repairs if it's still under warranty. So that needs to be accounted for in the evaluation of the envelope of the building. Things that are non-structural could be like sidewalks and pavement that's got some cracking, but it's not falling apart to the extent that it just can't be repaired anymore. Priority 4 items, it's a restoration of non-progressing deterioration. So there may have been some items that have been repaired over time because they were still capable of being repaired. It was still structurally sound. But at some point, we want to go in and do a complete restoration. So if you had some cracking pavement and it was okay to do a patch here and there, but now it's just extending to a point beyond where it can be repaired in a reasonable amount, then we look to go to more of a restoration, which is a larger extensive area of replacement. But it doesn't need to be done in immediate terms because it's the repair work that had been done to it is holding up. And then the priority 5 items, those are more or less the same things as the priority 4 items, but these things may still be functional and under warranty, but it may be something to keep an eye on in the near future, maybe 5 years down the road, that they should be definitely considered for replacement. Sometimes things like exterior doors or windows, they're still functioning, but they're starting to become a nuisance and it's starting to become difficult getting replacement parts. So, for the time being, there may be enough that material around to deal with the issues that you're experiencing, but in a couple of years, you're just going to want to replace it instead of doing the repairs that have been, becoming more prevalent. So now we'll get into what we've identified for our priority 1 items. I apologize for the small writing on this, but this is how the report is kind of done and then broken out by each of the priorities. So you'll see the columns. For this particular sheet, it's only what we call year 1 and priority 1. So the priorities and the years go hand in hand. The column that's listed BCS number, that's the number that's directly out of the report. So if you were to go into the building conditions survey under item 65, you would see a description that says the 1930 portion of the building had some wood frame floors. This kind of goes back to classroom 41 a couple of years ago where you had the floor issue. There was some water that had gotten down into the basement and caused some deterioration of the joists, and the whole floor sagged and had to be repaired. So this is a condition that we want to, keep in mind that there may be other areas like that down there that should be addressed. So we have estimated costs for this work. That's also a column that's at the far right of the screen of the page. And so we've gone through and determined that, there's possible areas that we should make sure we address in this first year since it is a structural concern. And the cost that we've associated with that work would be $150,000. You'll also see columns that have X's in these small narrow columns here. They're labeled new construction, addition, you don't have any of those since you already did your main construction work. Alterations, that would be just changing the usage of a space. Major systems, this would be like a mechanical system being replaced, a complete roof replacement, something that has a lot of components to it. We consider it a system. Energy, this would be something that may be considered as far as improving the energy efficiency of maybe a mechanical system or replacement of windows for energy conservation purposes. Another column here listed as bond. Sometimes we identify work that's so large, it probably couldn't be handled within a yearly budget cycle, that you just may want to consider it, lumping them into a larger, bigger project. So some of the bigger ticket items, you may see show up in this bond column. Doesn't mean that they couldn't become a capital, standalone every year or so you do a bunch of work. But for the purposes of this, we just separate out between bond, and in the last column is capital work. And these would be items that we would sometimes see maybe in the school budgets, for using repair reserve or something like that. So as we go through the items, you can kind of ask questions as to what these things may be. But so we discussed the floor in the old portion of the building. Want to get underneath there and do some evaluation of the joists and make sure whatever needs to be shored up, we can have that done before they have those issues that we had last time. There's a ramp. This is the second item here. It's a reconstruct ramp to basement level to comply with ADA. So there's the ramp that goes down to that little break room in the basement. That ramp is too steep for ADA compliance. It needs to have a transition, and it needs to be a little shallower of a pitch. Right now, because it was built, I guess, prior to the ADA, it's okay as a ramp, but if you want to use it for handicap access, you need to replace that ramp. In addition to that, there's some guardrails and handrails that need to be replaced, and some additional steps that should be replaced over by the old gym, which would now be the stairs going into the new music/art room. So some stairs over there that need to be replaced, and then the stairs down to the boiler room.
Jim, why do the rails and stairs need to be replaced? Is it because of their condition? Is there something wrong with the railings and the stairs, or?
The railings themselves are, once they do the ramp replacement, it'll require the handrails to be replaced as well. So they kind of go hand in hand. You couldn't extend the ramp without having to replace the handrails to make them longer due to the increased length of the ramp.
Okay, so do we need to replace the ramp in order for it to be ADA compliant?
If you're going to use it for, if it needed to be used for handicap access, yes, you would need to replace it for that.
If it does not need to be used for handicapped access, if it's used for something else, would that need to be replaced?
No.
Okay.
Nope. We only identified as a handicap accessible thing.
So the condition of it is okay. It's the railings aren't damaged or structurally flawed at the moment with the existing ramp. It's just in order to make it ADA compliant.
Right.
That would have to happen. And also the steps going into the other room, the steps are not damaged, but
well, steps are in bad shape.
They are.
Those are in need of repair, and not for ADA purposes. They just need to be replaced. But there is, in speaking with the building staff and custodial crew at the time, they've indicated that ramp is a very steep ramp for them to bring material in and out of, and that it would be helpful if it was less steep or configured differently. We had a line item in here for the roof replacement, but we've already gone into the process of getting that work done through our bids and trying to reconcile that. So we've taken that number out of here, but we had it as a line item at one time. So just wanted to leave it just as a reminder that we had looked at that, and it was considered that we've already moved that forward out of this priority. This next item here is providing fresh air in the steam room math room, principal's secretarial area, room 25, psychologist's office. So there's a couple of internal spaces that need to have fresh air brought into them. So that would be, right now, some of those spaces may have operable windows, but they should have a mechanical means of getting fresh air into those spaces. The library provide a relief system in the library. That's just something to allow the air that's coming in through mechanical ventilation now to have a path to exhaust out the room. So it's something, I guess, that may be in place but not functioning right now. So it's something that needs to be looked at in the mechanical design of that system for air circulation. This next item has to deal with trying to deal with the humidity levels in the commons area of the building. I guess other spaces as well where you have air conditioning going, window air conditioners, and then there's no air movement or anything. So I guess this is trying to deal with dehumidification of those spaces when there's a big temperature difference. So this has air circulation, controlling the temperature of air conditioners at night, allowing for dehumidification systems to be incorporated into the building, mechanical systems. So hopefully that'll be able to control the high humidity levels in those classrooms. This next item is a sink in the art room that apparently has issues where the way it's connected to the waste line that needs to be investigated to disconnect it from what seems to be a storm drain system. It should be on its own sanitary waste as opposed to draining into a storm drain system, so that in a heavy rain, it doesn't back up into the sink, into the classroom.
So when that was just redone, that was still connected to the same wrong line?
When the room was redone, I guess when we did the survey after things have been, in process of bidding, we identified this. So we didn't know it was that problem prior to. This is an item here. There's a sink faucet missing in the one of the boys' room toilets that may have been replaced. But in any case, if it's not there, it is a health and safety issue, believe it or not, that we should have a working faucet in all toilets. And then the last item is providing for emergency exit and lighting in the two courtyard areas. Should be the one courtyard, because the new courtyard already has exit lighting. So there is the existing courtyard probably needs new emergency lighting and exit signs over the doors from those courtyard areas. So the total cost for all those priority one items is $1,152,000. Go to priority two. And these are the things that are starting to show visible signs of deterioration, maybe out of warranty, beyond repair, or to address certain program needs. This was an item we had on here as a thing that we wanted to investigate to verify if the oil tank was a steel or a fiberglass oil tank. And it was determined that it is a fiberglass tank. So we've eliminated that cost from here. But it was something, if it was a steel tank, it should be replaced. Item two on this is provide foundation waterproofing in the 1930 and 1960 section of the building in the courtyard area. This has to do with preventing water to getting into the basement in that area where the floor joists were rotted. So that should be something that should be done in conjunction with the work in priority one, which was shoring up any of the flooring or support columns that may be damaged due to water. Third item is plaster coating the CMU on the facade of the building. It's starting to fail in certain areas. You could feel that it's a little weak or it's cracking, so it probably needs to be reapplied. Should be recoated perhaps with a, I wouldn't want to say a waterproofing material, but something that's got some breathability, but yet it'll seal any of the major cracks that are appearing in the stucco face. There's expansion joints that needs to be replaced. They dry out over time. The caulk in there can only last so long, so they start to dry out. When those caulk joints open up, that's where water will tend to get into the building. So those shall be replaced where they're bad. And then some of the brickwork on the building needs to be repointed. The mortar between the bricks is starting to get weak, so it needs to be scraped out, retooled in, and that would take care of any of the areas where mortar is cracking or falling out and leaving openings for water to enter the building. This next item here is removing and replacing of any concealed spline ceilings. Those are the ceiling tiles that aren't like your regular 2x4 tiles that you can just push out of the way and get to the things that are above the ceiling. These are kind of interlocked with little tabs and metal fins that the minute you take one out, they never go back in place. They're a nightmare for the building staff to work with. If it's a custodial staff or the IT staff or anybody trying to do anything above the ceilings, it just becomes a real problem. So there are a few classrooms that still have that type of ceiling in place, and they should be removed and then put in with the new 2x4 tiles. Classroom 32, replace. So in our report, there's a lot of door replacements. Some were immediate needs, some were not so bad, some we could put off. So there's 3 phases of door replacement. This one was identified as phase 1. So replace 32 existing classroom single doors, remove and reinstall the lock sets. Since your lock sets are new, they can be reused in a new door. So that would save a little bit of money on that, but the door panels themselves are all old and should be replaced. And replace 2 pairs of cross corridor doors and hardware. So within the building, there are those doors that open up down the middle of a hallway. Typically, they're held open with a magnetic hold open device. So we've identified 2 pairs that are in bad shape and should be replaced. But this would take care of, I think, the majority of your classroom doors issues that you're experiencing with whether they might not be closing properly, they're beat up, whatever the case may be. The mechanical, the commons area needs some mechanical fresh air. Again, that space is kind of enclosed, or it's surrounded by classrooms and hallways. So mechanical system needs to be modified so that there's a way of bringing fresh air into that space. Right now, it gets its heat and it gets some sort of exhaust air, but it's not bringing. There's nothing that's bringing fresh air into that space. There's 2 copy rooms that should have an exhaust fan. We do have a new one that was part of the work that got done with the building addition. It was going to be a space of some other needs, but now it's a copy room, so that room is one of the 2 that needs to have an exhaust fan. And that just gets the fumes out of the space from all the print ink and anything that's being laminated. It just the air is kind of heavy in there if those machines are going. Some motion detection systems. Those are the things that detect, the lights to come on and off in classrooms. Some of those are should be replaced and upgraded to a newer system. Provide additional Wi-Fi coverage in the basement areas. As a technology item, this would be, I guess, due to lack of the Wi-Fi being able to reach certain areas of the basement. So this would be something to, allow more computer usage down there. We have up in here upgrading the card access system. I know this is something we'll probably engaging in right now with what we're doing with the security system. Right now we have an old system and a new system. I guess this would be upgrading to be one unified system. At the time when we were looking at the building, we knew there was going to be two. We figured if there was going to be money spent in that area, upgrading the system at this time would be a good idea. Providing ADA ramps at exit doors from classrooms to provide ADA access to the courtyard. This is the classrooms that are open onto the courtyard. There's some exterior doors at classroom 23, 27, 60, 61, 62. So there's probably like a 4 or 5 inch drop from the classroom into those spaces, into that courtyard. So if there's going to be handicap access out there, it would need to have a ramp. Doesn't necessarily mean that every one of these classrooms should have it, but if there were a few that were going to be utilized, with a handicap student or teacher, that these are the rooms that have a door where there's a 6 inch or 1 foot ramp or step down into the courtyard that would need a ramp so someone in a wheelchair can get out there. There's some toilet renovation work, existing boys and girls toilet rooms that are across from the small gym. Replace all the interior finishes, the plumbing fixtures. If there's any partitions in there, those toilet rooms would now be, should be upgraded under the priority 2 work. So the total for all these items, as we've just discussed, is $1,298,000. Priority 3 items. These are stopping the progression of deterioration of surfaces and the non-structural components. So courtyard drainage issues need to improve provide additional drainage or replace existing drainage pools. Right now there's some flooding that happens in there. I know there's some drainage, but whether there's roots growing into the drain pipes or whatever it is, or maybe just additional drainage pools needed, this would accommodate, account for some of that.
Oh, sorry, Jim. So that first item there says foundation walls need waterproof coating at 1930. Isn't that was like in the first thing though too? Is that like?
Yeah, I think this is this just, for whatever reason, this column here should have been expanded down and says, I think it says it is already accounted for in priority 2.
Okay.
So that says, this drainage work needs to be done, but the waterproofing still is happening, but it happens in priority 2.
Right, and that cost is not in that.
No, that's not part of that. Nope, that's just for drainage and piping and everything in there. So some existing drainage, this describes some drainage outside the courtyard. This may be in the existing bus loop, other areas where we didn't do a lot of major improvements to the pavement. So these, even though we did some upgrades to the drainage in the driveways that were expanded and connected to, there are still a few other areas that were noted that may need to have, additional drainage done in the parking or in the bus loop areas. So it might be just cleaning or new piping or new drainage structures for those spaces. And remove and replace asphalt pavement at the north parking lot. I think this is more or less in the bond project, we did a recoating of the bus loop. Well, the bus loop was just recoated with asphalt and crack sealed, but the pavement was never replaced. So this would be consideration for ripping up the pavement and putting down new, as opposed to just doing an overlay or a seal coat.
So that's of the bus loop, not of the actual new parking lot, because the new parking lot was done, right?
Right.
Where we redid the orientation of the of the spots.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
this is
Just the circular loop.
right, coming through and passing the front of the building and then
Old
back
front.
out to the street.
Yeah.
There's still a couple of concrete sidewalks and curbs around that need some repair and replacement, kind of around the library the entrance area. So there's a few items there that should be repaired. Some masonry joints, mortar joints that aren't so bad to the point where they need to be done in priority 2. They would do some additional repair work in this third priority. And then the chimney is showing signs of deterioration, and it should have a proper cap to prevent any moisture from getting into the chimney flue. So that would be part of this masonry work. There's a couple of classrooms that still have single pane aluminum frame window units. So they're pretty much not energy efficient at all. These are classrooms 41, 48, 51, the nurse's office, everything around that front part of the original building. I mean, the courtyard side of the original building. So those are windows that should be replaced. Still some classrooms that have asbestos floor tile. I know a bunch were done last summer. This just identifies the remaining classrooms that should be done for the abatement. This is phase 2 of the door replacement. So there's there's 32 in the first round, and there's another 32 after that to be done. Be a continuation of that work. There's exhaust fans, replace existing exhaust fans and relief hoods, and convert controls to DDC. Most of them are, that's the DDC controls. And it's a system that was currently installed where you can kind of monitor and see how things are operating. Right now, they'll be tied into the building management system. So yes, there's exhaust fans right now. They're just kind of operating on their own, but there should be a way of controlling them, of monitoring their control. Replace the damaged courtyard basement fresh air intake grill. So right now there's a grill that brings some outside air into the basement, I guess, to prevent from moisture building up in the air down underneath the floor. Looks like it's been either kicked or damaged in some way, that it's now kind of crushed and it needs to be replaced. Providing air conditioning for the new science room and the greeter station. This came out as a discussion in reviewing the building condition survey with the administration recently, to say those two spaces didn't have air conditioning as part of the new construction, but they should be considered in the work, scope of work being done or considered for the BCS. And then there's some additional air conditioning for classrooms 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's all of these, classroom spaces should be considered for air conditioning, where we would do what they call a ductless split system. And that's an air conditioning system where you have a unit mounted on a wall, and it gets piped outside to a condenser unit. And they're typically good enough to provide, the required air conditioning for those size spaces, without having to do an extensive amount of duct work and mechanical equipment on your roof or cooling towers of that sort. So this would, handle a large majority of your classrooms getting air conditioning that don't currently have it. Oh, sorry. Where'd I go? The existing electric water heater, right now it's functioning properly, but it's one of those things that's starting to get close to the end of its life expectancy and should be replaced, or at least budgeted to be replaced in the near coming future. There's replace 3 station trough sinks with individual sinks. just have to find out where these are, or my engineer had looked at this, so I'm not quite sure what spaces they are, but right now, if there were a trough sink where students are cleaning or washing hands, that isn't in an art room. They should be really individual sinks for those purposes. Provide a rooftop lightning protection system. This is something that we don't see in a lot of schools, but in your area, it's probably something that should definitely be considered. And this would prevent the building, in the case of a lightning strike, from doing major damage to the building. The lightning protection system, will attract the lightning and direct it to the ground as opposed to doing other damage. So it's something that we would recommend being done. Lighting on the soffit light fixtures around the building, those overhangs that stick out from the building. Some of those have lighting in them, so they should all be replaced, along with some other light poles that might be needed along the roadway, or walks or things of that nature that provide better illumination outside the building. And the last item is remove and replace sink-based cabinets with new ADA compliant sink-based cabinets in classrooms 3, 5, 7, 9, 20, 21, basically all of your classrooms where you currently have a sink-based cabinet that's in the classroom and the students can use it to wash their hands. You would need to have a knee space provided so a student in a wheelchair or a teacher in a wheelchair can get under that sink and be able to use the faucet to wash their hands. So the total cost for all the priority 3 items comes to $2,745,000. This slide here is, since priority 4 and 5 were kind of minor in the amount, they just combined it onto the single slide. So priority 4 items just starting to show signs of weathering and age. They're outdated or obsolete and just need to, can be replaced, but it can be done, not immediately, but in a couple of years. So replacing 4 pairs of exterior doors, frames, and 3 basement entry doors. Replace the Bilko doors. Those are the double hatch doors that get you into the basement from the courtyard. Exterior doors with new FRP. Those are the doors that have the fiberglass reinforced polymer skin as opposed to like a metal or a wood. And then provide new panic hardware and aluminum frames because the frames are rotting out. So this is kind of a continuation of that door replacement that I was describing. So this addresses all your exterior doors. The other 2 phases were all your interior classroom doors. And then this picks up all the outside, a few of the outside doors that need to be replaced. Classroom 27, remove glass wall and replace with a stud and gypsum wallboard partition for sound and privacy. Classrooms 3, 5, 7, 9, partition walls stop at the ceiling. Recommend that these walls be extended to the ceiling, again, to provide for prevention of sound transmission. Remove existing folding partition at room 90 and 92 and construct a permanent type wall, full height, with an acoustic rating of 53 STC. That's, I guess, existing classrooms that had a folding partition that you can open up the room to 2 classrooms. Those walls currently haven't been opened in many years, so removing them and putting in a permanent wall is a better solution. And then some classrooms, some toilet rooms need to have wall tile replaced, since it's pretty dated and old. Not that it's falling off the wall, but it's something that should be, removed and replaced with something that's newer, cleaner, nicer looking. So there's toilet rooms 13, 15, 26, 30, 71, 75, 85. So it's a whole series of student toilet rooms.
Jim, which is classroom 27 with the glass wall? I'm having difficulty visualizing that.
So that's, I think that's between there's a, is it the psychologist's office? There's two
Oh,
classrooms.
right, gotcha. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yep.
That little space in between there. Remove and replace carpet at the library. Carpet will typically last, maybe get 10 years out of a carpet. I don't know how long that one's been down, but it's probably the point where it could be replaced. Maybe consider, a combination of a flooring type of product and a carpet, perhaps. But there's, a large area of carpet in there that should be replaced. Existing ceramic. Kindergarten classrooms which have toilets within them, the flooring, which is a ceramic tile, should be replaced. And in some other toilet rooms, again, this is a floor finish that should be removed and replaced. You've been doing a whole program of that, where you're doing some type of laminate floors in the toilet rooms, which is a good idea. It's a great product. It cleans nice. Maybe this is a continuation of that program for these toilet rooms. That's a big ticket item, replacing all the original unit ventilators in the building or in the classrooms. Those are the big units that sit on the outside wall that bring in your fresh air to the spaces and provide the heat and ventilation for those classrooms. Those units are could be almost 20 years old or more. So they definitely should be something that should be planned on for replacement. And as you can see, it's a $1.2 million ticket item. So there's a lot of them. Each unit themselves costs about $30,000 to replace. So it adds up really quick. And this item here kind of goes hand in hand with the toilet room renovations, replacing all the original plumbing fixtures. So any of the classrooms, any of the toilet rooms that we were doing wall tile, floor tile, this picks up the plumbing fixtures to be replaced as well. So it becomes a complete refurbish of any remaining toilet rooms that needed to be, completely upgraded.
Jim, are there any grants out there now for ventilation, especially with COVID?
I know there is, state was looking at some grant program, but nothing that I've heard of that's been officially approved or put out yet. I know they're kicking around some funding or some projects, funding sources that would be applicable for the fresh air that should be in the buildings to improve that air quality. And then
Keep your eyes out. If you see anything, let us know.
Yeah, I know they keep hearing stuff, but nothing definite yet. And we only have one item for priority 5, and this is to replace the original steam and condensate piping in the building. So many areas of the building have steam heat. So from the boiler room, those pipes go to your unit ventilators or the radiators in the building and bring the steam, and then what comes back to the boilers is condensate water. So over time, those pipes tend to get corroded and need to be replaced. I know there's been certain areas in the building where that had already been done, particularly in the older sections of the building. So it's definitely something that should be considered. I think the problem that was discovered a couple of years ago has been repaired, and nothing else seems to be happening or continuing. But because it happened in one place, it's definitely going to happen eventually somewhere else. So that's definitely something that should be considered to be done, probably as a priority 5 item. So the total cost for the priority 4 and 5 items is $2,250,000. And then all the priorities combined together would give you an overall cost of $7,445,000 of work to be done on the original part of the building. Just to kind of review where we looked. So the area in blue here is your new addition. And then this is the line that kind of marked all the spaces that we walked through when we did the survey in December of 2020. So in the next go around, I think it's 5 years from now, this part of the building will be included in the building condition survey. But now we have a good starting point for knowing the age of things here. We won't hopefully have any issues, but we'll continue to monitor things in and around the building that were part of the old, this year's survey, and hopefully get picked up and completed in 5 years down the road. Is there any questions on the items as I review them kind of quickly? I know you just got a chance to see some of this stuff tonight, or just briefly beforehand, but I have the report now that we've reviewed it. We can share it with everybody and get a chance to digest it a little bit, and then kind of figure out a plan of attack for what your thoughts on doing work in maybe the first year, or setting up a plan for some of the other projects that need to get done.
Right. Jim, thank you very much. It was really thorough. I think we need to sort of digest what's on there. It looks like a big number. We've just spent a lot of money on our school. So I think we really need to look at what we're doing there. And I feel like I kind of need to look at the previous 5-year plan and see how we tackled and what we tackled. And if any of those things are still showing up in this plan that we weren't able to get to, I kind of don't remember at this point.
Right.
But I know I would find that useful to look at. So I guess we just got to look at that and prioritize.
Yeah, that would probably be a good, way of kind of looking at it. What's still there needs to get done, right away, and what continues to show up on that list. And if it's, it started off last 5 years was at $20,000, is that same item at $60,000? So it means just not getting any, never got addressed and isn't getting better.
Yeah. And I don't know if when the Buildings and Ground Committee last looked at that. And how that's coming along, but that's we can get a committee update from there. I don't know, Dave, if you have any insight onto when with the previous 5-year plan, how that was being handled, or Mike, in terms of flowing into this new one. But I mean, it's probably something that we'll have to sit down with at a work session and really go over, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably it.
Yeah, Barbara, we did, at the last committee meeting, we did discuss this 5-year plan as a group. I put it out to them so that we could start looking at it and trying to digest it ourselves. So we'll definitely be re-talking about it at our next meeting, which is going to probably be in February.
Okay, so Mike, how did we fare with our last 5-year plan and things that were on that? Did most of those things get addressed, or have some of those moved into this plan now?
I did not really look at the last 5-year plan because I kind of assumed a lot of that was being taken care of by this current capital project. But I will try to pull it out and take a look at it.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because if there's stuff that didn't get taken care of from that plan, are they still on this plan? Are they in worse condition? And is the estimate, as Jim was just saying, it was suddenly more because of further deterioration? So that, I think that would be really helpful to know.
Okay.
Barbara, I'd like to, this is kind of all consuming right now. I'd rather focus on finishing out the new capital improvement, and then we can sit down and start looking at the next 5 years. I don't want to confuse people with, the two things right now. And I think there's a lot of things in the older building that needed to be renovated that didn't get included in the capital improvement just because of money. But right now, I just think it's overwhelming to talk. We haven't even, finished out this capital improvement right now. So I'd like to focus on that, get that taken care of, and then we can start to, delve into this a little bit. I mean, I don't know if the people out in the community are seeing this right now. They're going, "What the heck?" It's pretty all consuming. But again, we do have an old building, and we're trying to make it the best we can. And it's good information. I really appreciate all the work, but right now I'd rather finish out what we got going in front of us, and then we go to this.
I think we definitely need to finish that out, Tim, but I also think in terms of looking at the previous plan to now is if there's stuff that has to get taken care of, what's the least expensive way to take care of those things? Is it more timely or, waiting until we don't have an issue going on that we say, okay, now we can focus on that stuff, but then do you shoot yourself in the foot by waiting too long? So that's just where I think that looking at the other plan compared to this would be helpful in helping us make decisions as we go forward.
I really agree to that, but I think, these two plans are pretty, from what I remember, they're pretty close. The same stuff is still needs to be done, and not a lot got done because the focus was on the new part of the building and expanding.
Right. Yeah. The stuff this eventually has to be tackled, but yes, we're still certainly mentally, I think, focused on wrapping up our current project.
Yeah, I'd like to stay focused on that right now.
Okay, so Jim, thank you so much. This is really important and good to know, and we'll figure out how we're going to address these things. Which things and how we'll address them going forward.
Very good. Yes, I agree. It's a way to approach it, and we'll look at the previous list as well. I think we have a copy of that, and we can kind of compare notes.
I mean, I know this is like we're obligated to put some, to give the state our building condition survey, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's really what part of this is. You're not just coming up with a list of things for us to do to start working on as soon as we finish this thing. This is because we've actually had to submit this to the state so they have an accurate assessment of our building condition.
Right, and they do utilize this as a barometer as far as work that you're looking to maybe do next year in a capital budget to do an improvement outside the building that's going to involve some budgeting and cost, and they're going to look and say, well, did you take care of your major issue before you, I don't know, put in an outdoor reading garden or something? I don't know.
Right. And every school district is submitting a similar plan to
Yes.
the state. Right. Okay.
Yeah, between last year and this year, 2022, all school districts will have had to gone through this process and reported it to the state, and then come up with a 5-year plan of all the work.
Right.
And what's the status on the roof for this summer?
Right now, I guess I got to talk with Derek. He was speaking with the roofing contractor about getting his pricing finalized. There had been some increase in material costs. So we just want to know what that is. I know the roof, when we had bid it, was under budget. So if it's still within that, the contractor's indicated that he's, I think, willing to do the work and he can get the materials. So now we're just trying to make sure that what he's providing us, if it's an additional cost, we got to present it back to you to make sure it's something that they can we can allow them to move forward with.
I would guess we have to get our attorney involved too, because it was
the
lowest bidder.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll hopefully hear from you soonish about that, so we have an idea.
Yeah, it'll be definitely something we'll have for the next update.
All right, great. Anybody else here have any questions for Jim right now? Okay, Jim, thank you so much. Great to see you.
You too. Enjoy the holidays.
Happy
Thank
holidays.
you.
Thanks.
Happy New Year, Jim.
Happy New Year, everybody. I'm gonna end my thing, and there you go.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks. Have a good night. Okay, a lot of information to digest there. Oops. So let's move on along then. Deb, do you want to give us a COVID update?
Yes. Well, although spring school experienced a spike in COVID cases, I just want to frame that the previous 2 weeks, the average at spring school was 1.5%, or 13 total positive cases. That's what we reported to the New York State Department of Health. This changed dramatically on Monday with the highest single day numbers that Springs has ever had. 7 students and 3 staff. East Hampton testing site positivity rate for the same past 2 weeks was 10.06, just to give you a perspective of Springs next to East Hampton. And then in Suffolk County, the 7-day rate was 9.6. So still a low number, but for us, definitely a concern. Our absentee rate for yesterday and today was about 20%. Friday, I reported to the board with that threat. We were at 23%. So again, high for us. Usually we're at 5% absentee rate on the average. We are experiencing 7 to 10 teachers out a day. They're not all sick. Some are home because of spouses or because of their children having been sick or have COVID. So it's been a difficult week. We want to just get through the weekend. We want everybody to stay safe. We're following other districts as far as limiting spectators at our games. We're not permitting our teams or students to watch the games when they get back from practice. We've canceled our pep rally this week. We've gone back to our reopening plan, and we're following that chart that, you know, when the numbers are high, we have to pull back. We're requesting seating charts from our teachers in order to do contact tracing. The county is back in helping school districts with contact tracing. For a while there, they weren't helping us. We were on our own, but I've reached out to them successfully the last couple of days, and they've assisted us in contact tracing. We have a double role to play now, because we do have students that are vaccinated, so their status changes if they've been in close contact with somebody and they've been vaccinated. What also changes is if a child has had COVID. You can look back 3 months, and if that child has previously had COVID, they also do not have to quarantine. So there's a lot of contact tracing going on, all administrators on board, nurses, and of course our staff, when they're involved, they help us a great deal with where they have been and who they were in close contact with. Unmasked or unvaccinated are the 2 big key indicators for quarantining. We did quarantine a basketball team. That was very unfortunate, but we also heard that the district up Island, who we were going to play against, they were very much in favor, had no plans of coming out to play against us anyway. So once you have too few students that you can play with, you can't play a game. I want to really thank everybody who's pitching in. Our nurses have been phenomenal. Our teachers are sending kids down as soon as they cough or sneeze. This particular variant is cold symptoms, not necessarily a fever, but just a cough, a nose, running. People are being tested frequently. I get those numbers as well from our staff and our students on who's been tested and who's negative as well as positive. While I have the parents on, I just want to remind them, do not send your child to school if they're sick. Please keep them home. I know you have to work, but it is really for the safety of our children, who they go home to, and for our staff. If your child has a cough, shortness of breath, runny nose, sore throat, loss of taste and smell, our kids are pretty good at saying, I can't taste that, I can't smell that. That's a sign that they should be seen by a doctor or get tested. 2 letters have gone out recently to our parents and emails. I just want them to be aware of the website. Our website has links to the CDC, so when in doubt, you can check our website, but you can also go to any CDC website and put in school COVID procedures, and they'll come up as well. And we had a sweater day today, and we're going ahead with all our spirit things. I'm trying to keep the morale up. The kids look beautiful on Monday. They dress their best. And then tomorrow, I think it's Jersey Day. So that always brings out the best in all of us as we celebrate our teams that either have done well or not done well this year. So any questions on COVID?
Deb, thanks very much. Wow, what a week it sounds like. And I'm glad that you're able to keep your spirits up and to still try to make things fun for our kids. It's a big week for them, and keeping everybody's attention and all that with the holidays. And I know you guys are doing an amazing job like you always do.
Thank you.
So we have one item of recognition on our agenda this evening. Sounds
I'm
very
turn that
good.
over to Mrs. Cleary.
All right, great.
Hi, everybody. I don't think Miss Thayer is on. Is she on by any chance? Nope. Okay. So we wanted to recognize Lindsay Thayer, who is one of our veteran teachers. She's third grade, and she was granted one of the Greater East Hampton Education Foundation's mini grants for a leveled library for her classroom. So she received $578, and she's going to put that toward books to supplement her classroom library, mainly lower level books that can be, accessed by some of our struggling readers, and high interest, low level books. So we did lose some books in storage when we went for our reopening, both last year and a little bit in this year. So that was a way for her to supplement her library. And we just want to thank the East Hampton Education Foundation. They've dropped the greater from their name. They have been generous to us for years and years. And there are so many programs that we run and materials that we have, educational materials, because of them. So thank you very much to them, and congratulations to Lindsay.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Christine. And yes, thank you to the East Hampton Education Fund.
Foundation.
They're pretty great.
It's
Yes, they're still great, even if it's not in their name. But
Exactly.
to us, and congratulations to Miss Thayer as well. Good for her for going out and getting that and being able to supplement her classroom.
Yeah.
So moving along, it's time for public commentary number 1 in our meeting, which is for items of our board business items regarding personnel, finance, and items this month. If there's anybody has a question, LTV, should be a number up there for you. If you have a question and want to call in, we'll wait a short bit and then we'll move ahead. And LTV, if someone should call in, please give us a heads up.
Okay, at this time, there's no callers on the line.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into personnel items. Deb?
Okay. Item A is appointment of translators. We have 3 of our staff there for translating at conferences or on the phone after hours, especially in contact tracing. It occurs at all hours. Appointment of ABA services. This is for special needs students. These individuals go into the home and provide ABA services to our special needs youngsters. ABA people need to be supervised by somebody by regulation. So one of our own staff has volunteered to do this, and we will be bringing forward to the board a memorandum of agreement after the union and the attorney work that out. But in the meantime, she does need to supervise this person above Lisa Brown. She's a BCBA, and that's Cynthia Pantole, for $100 an hour, not to exceed 20, and it will be grant funded. In the past, we always went to an agency for this service, but the agencies are stretched and do not really want to go into people's homes. They're doing a lot virtually. So we're very fortunate to have somebody on staff that can provide this service for us, but it's not in the current contract for our teachers. Again, thanks to the board for raising our substitute rate. Tonight you have 2 substitute custodians. One of them is back, who had to leave us for medical reasons, and he's going to come back and work part-time for us. The other 3 are non-certified teachers. One of them is just really lovely. She's brand new to teaching. She's got some tests to take, and she'll be fully certified, but she's just lovely. We really enjoyed having her today. Stipends is letter E. The opera, as you know, is back, and the numbers are really high, so we're asking Morgan Bach to step up for a flat fee of $500 to help out, especially in the art area. We did have a teacher go out, and a substitute stepped in for this person for volleyball. So that's a prorated for 7 days for her stepping up and helping us out with the volleyball team. We really appreciate Kim doing that for us. We're amending letter F. Jenna Rocca, teacher assistant, who just finished her student teaching, is back with us. Happy to have her back. So she came back early. Congratulations to Margaret Doyle. She was a substitute teacher assistant who recently got her certification. So she's on there as a replacement for a previous TA who left us. So congratulations to Margaret Doyle. The other agreements there are financial. I'll let Mike take those. They're the employment contracts. And individual contracts I'll also let Mike take.
Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead with personnel items for now so we can approve those
Yes.
things. So does anybody have any questions on this first bunch of personnel items? Then do I have a motion to move personnel items A through G to consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have our employment agreements.
Okay, the first item is the custodial unit memorandum of agreement for their contract. Item B is the CSCA fully executed agreement for the period July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2025. For some reason, I believe that actual fully executed contract got overlooked at the time the agreement was put through the MOA. Item C is the individual contract for Kelly Carmona, account clerk. Item D is the individual contract for Julie Bistrian, senior account clerk. Item E is the individual contract for Suzanne Janis, senior office assistant. Item F is for Brenda Crozier, the greeter. Item G is the individual contract for Linda Kernell, superintendent secretary. Item H is the individual contract for Marion Flaherty, the head bus driver. Item I is the individual contract for Michael Henry, school business official treasurer. And item J is the individual contract for Deb Winter, superintendent.
Thank you very much, Mike. Does anyone have a question about any of this right now? In that case, do I have a motion to move employment agreements A through J to consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mike, we've got some
Finance information items. Item A is the appropriation status report as of November 2021. Item B is the revenue status report, also for the period ended November 2021. Then it goes into, I guess, more finance. Those are just information report items.
Yep.
All right. Item area 9 is finance. For board acceptance, we've got the item A is the warrants for November, which also includes the major expenditures report. Item B is the claims audit report for November 2021. Items-
Mike, I noticed on that we still have like an issue with people having POs and not having the correct price on there. It's like,
It's still an issue. They're not accounting for or allowing for any. We've got shipping issues, and also Kelly's been doing a diligent job of going after the vendors. We're getting these off of different bid lists, and some of these vendors are increasing the prices because they're getting their prices increased. So it's, we're reporting it to Eastern Suffolk BOCES where it's a BOCES bid item. We're contacting Ed Data if it's an Ed Data bid item. And we're trying to work our way through it to get the refunds on all of those items. It's just one of those things with this whole pandemic, all these items, the delays and prices going through the roof.
And we're also battling with shipping too, trying to get the product here.
right, yeah.
In the past, we used to get a lot of this stuff shipped for free. Now they're not doing it for free because they really
No, they're charging when they didn't used to.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for
Okay.
that info. Yeah.
All right. Continuing on, item C is the agreement. Bilinguals Inc. doing business as Achieve Beyond. Item D is the capital project plaque. Item E is the agreement.
Actually, I think we're going to hold off on the capital project
All right, so
plaque because
table
we're
that.
talking about getting some other estimates.
Yep.
So let's table item D for now, please.
Item E is the agreement with Harmony Heights. Item F is the official acceptance of the Greater East Hampton Education Fund grant for Lindsay Thayer. And that closes that out for that section.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. Do I have a motion to move finance items A through C and then E and F to consent agenda?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
We have one item here on special education.
You have 3 cases, Barbara, that's it.
Yep, okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the recommendations from the Committee on Special Education, CSE cases 1 through 3. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
I guess that would be me. Item 11 is the meeting minutes for the
Yep.
December Health, Safety, and Facilities meeting.
Right. Along with the regular meetings from
November 2nd and November 16th.
16th. Yep. So, can we, well, actually, we're just approving the minutes here, but do you want to give us a little rundown on the Health, Safety, and Facilities meeting?
Well, we spent a lot of time at the meeting. That was on December the 1st, just really discussing the building condition survey and the 5-year plan.
Right.
I presented the group with the whole list that Jim had, which was more expanded than what he did here, because as a result of that meeting, we spoke with him and he pulled a couple of items out, moved things around a little bit.
Right.
So we made a little bit of initial headway, but there's a lot to absorb, a lot to digest. And I asked the committee to kind of, just take a look at this and think about some things. And we'll get back together. We'll start hammering out and seeing if we want to change the priorities of items and things like that and see what's important. some of those ticket items are big ticket items.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know the one thing I looked at right off, he has 3 classrooms to abate the asbestos floors around the commons area at $50,000 a classroom. Well, we did that over the last, we just did what, four or 5 classrooms over the past 2 years, and I don't think we spent more than combined more than $34,000 per classroom. So I think we can do it ourselves the way we've been doing it, and trim that money a little bit back. And what we've been doing is using, every year we allocate some money for special projects like that, and we've been using that transfer to capital money for that purpose. And again, I think we'll have enough money in next year's go around to do those 3 rooms next summer.
Right. Okay. Good. Okay, so be it resolved then that the Board of Education accepts the minutes for the Health and Safety and Facilities meeting, the minutes from the November 2nd, 2021 board meeting, and the November 16th, 2021 board meeting. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Deb, if you want to go over the enrollment report.
Yes. Okay. Not much of a change from last month. We're comparing month to month from previous years at the board's request. So our K through 8 enrollment is very similar. We have a total with our special ed students without pre-K, 663 students right now, compared to 615 last year this time, and then the year before, 2019-20, 678 students. So slightly down from that. When you add in pre-K, we have another 31 students actually enrolled in pre-K right now. So,
Deb, is this last column 1920?
yes.
Okay, it doesn't say that there's no heading on the columns.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, mine has it. Sorry.
Okay.
I wonder why that is. I'm looking at a piece of paper, so I apologize.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
There wasn't much activity either on the high school side. No new enrollments.
Well, that's good. Any decreases?
We're working on that. We have our tuition billing by the number of days students attend. So.
Okay. So I know we just had a long and detailed presentation on our building plan, but we do have a preliminary budget presentation here that Mike has put together for us to start us thinking about budget season, which is just around the corner.
Yep. You know, I was looking at a lot of different things, and we've put together, you know, rolling forward the budget. I'm going to try to share my screen if I could figure that out. Share screen. Here we go.
Yeah.
Where is it? It is right here.
There you go, Mike. You got it.
All right. All right, from the beginning, that's the heading sheet, okay? So the first page, what we're starting out with here is showing a kind of a comparison of where Springs is on certain components versus the average for the state of New York among all districts. So the first item is, how does the district's revenue compare to the state?
Sorry, Mike, and this is actually your new program that you have that's allowing you
Yes,
to do that,
a
right?
lot of this data is collected by Forecast 5 Analytics. They pull it right out of the various state files and databases. So that's how they were able to get all this cool information. But you can see on the left-hand side, percentage of total. Springs, 93.88% of our revenue comes from local share, comes from our tax levies. 5.9% is state sources or state aid. Whereas the average of all schools across New York State, they get a significantly more in state aid than we do. They get 38.57%, and so only 60.81% is what they require from their tax base. When you look at it on an average dollar per student, the ratios are still the same, but you can see $26,387.10 per student is what we raise in taxes from our community, and we get $1,657.06 in state aid from the state for each student. And you can see that right there, the difference of the average across the states. It's quite a swing. The next component is, how does the district spending compare to the state? Well, in the percent totals, we spend 40.28% of our budget on personal services, meaning salaries and wages of employees. We spend 39.78% on what we call contractual, supplies, and other. So contractual basically is any kind of service that we purchase to do different kinds of work. And that would also include in their services to organizations like BOCES. And then we spend 19.36% of our budget on employee benefits. Compared to the state, the rest of the schools around the state would spend 52.25% of their budget on personal services, only 22.39% on contractual, supplies, and other, and 24.71% on employee benefits. I think the big disparity, the big difference between our contractual column of 39.78 and everybody else at 22.39 is, remember, tuition is a contractual expenditure, and we're spending close to $10 million on tuition per year. So you'll see the average dollar per student, $10,477 per student, goes to personal services, $10,346 to the contractual and supplies, and then $5,036.33 goes to employee benefits. And next to it is the similar comparison for the average around the state. Here's a little graph showing our financial condition. The bottom section of the graph that's in blue, the big chunk there, that shows you the overall fund balance of the district. So that's your undesignated, that's your reserves, all combined. And you can see from 2010, we steadily grew till 2017, and then the bottom dropped out. But if you remember, in 2018, that's when we moved the $6 million from the capital reserve fund to the capital project to help pay for that the capital project that we're just finishing up. And conversely, the orange line jumps up in that same year. That's the expense line, and it would show that $6 million being an expense, a transfer out to the capital fund. So they're opposite one another, but they line up. And revenue has just had a steady kind of increase year after year after year. How does the district's financial position compare to others? So you could see some of the local East End school districts like Montauk, Amagansett, Sag Harbor, East Hampton, all are their financial position, which is in this graph, it shows fund balance as a percentage of the revenue that you collect for the 2020 fiscal year. So we are the only school district lower than us is Bridgehampton, but we're one of the lowest on the East End in terms of what is the percentage of our fund balance to our revenue source. How does per student spending compare to the others? This was an interesting graphic as well. What you can see is Springs spends the least per student than any of the other districts on the East End. And East Hampton, who is the next one above us, spends $6,000 per student more than what we do at Springs. Average teacher salaries, how do they compare? Again, among the East End, We're at 92,756. Bridgehampton spends 101,963. That's the average salary for a teacher in 2021. So yeah, we're a little bit behind everybody else according to the state records. How do teacher staffing levels compare? This was kind of interesting because we're now at the top. We have 8.667 students for every teacher, and East Hampton has 10.463 students for each full-time equivalent teacher. All the other districts are a little bit lower under us, between 7.9 and 8.3, with Bridgehampton all the way down at 3.8 students per teacher. So, the lower that number is, the more attention each student gets by, teacher to student. So it's an interesting comparison. Our budget assumptions, here's where we're going to get into a little bit of the meat and gravy of the rollover. Last year's budget, I rolled it forward, meaning what I did is all of the salaries, the contractual items where we have steps and things like that, or we know there are set percentage increases each of the year based on those contracts. Those have all been increased accordingly for the new year coming up. I've reinstated, if you remember last year when we were trying to trim down our tax levy, what we did is we used some of the pandemic relief grant money, and we identified certain expenses for supplies and materials and salaries to be paid for out of the pandemic relief grant. Well, that's a one-shot item, and we don't have that pandemic relief grant again next year. So those same people, that money got put back into the budget going into this calculation of a roll forward or a simulation. As I said before, I advanced all employee pay by their contractual increases. Anticipated, I already factored in anticipated increases for employee benefits. We already know that the health insurance, the night shift health insurance, is going to be going up by 15%, the premium. And the impact on next school year is that it's going to represent roughly about half of that, 7.5%, because the night shift premium is based on a calendar year, whereas we run everything on a fiscal year. So half of that increase is going to be borne in next year. And then I'm allowing for a slight increase the following year, because that seems to be the trend that night shift has done, is they have one big bump, and after that they follow it by several years of small increases. Heat, light, and power costs were not increased in this 21 farther than was done from 2021 to 21-22. It's a little too early at this fiscal year to really judge how the heat, light, and power costs are going to impact us, especially with the new footprint. Keep in mind, we've got a lot of the lighting we have is the LED lights, which are very cost effective. They're very inexpensive to run. The heat portion, we've had a couple of cold snaps, but they've been very short in duration. But for the most part, it's been very mild. So we haven't really had the demand that we would normally see this early in December going into January. But we have to wait and see how that's going to pan out. And again, as the budget process builds, if we start to see that all of a sudden heat costs or power costs or things are really going to start escalating, we may have to make adjustments in those line items in the budget rolling it forward. But I'm not anticipating much of that at all at this point in time. So our tax levy cap, again, there's a formula that we go through. I just had to update this today because finally I did see that the ORPTS, the Office of Real Property Tax Services, finally published the tax-based growth factor at 1.0076. So what this all does is we multiply last year's levy by that tax-based growth factor. We get a revised number of 27,798. We add back in the prior year pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes on some properties that are in Springs that East Hampton will pay us. It's basically a run through from the state of New York. And then we've got all of these capital tax levy exclusions from this current school year, 2022, that we have to back out of the number, which is, last year we paid $100,000 in bond principal. We paid $433,000 in bond interest. We subtract out the building aid off of the governor's projection. We add back in the BOCES capital component. Transportation aid, we don't have any because we don't really have a capital expenditure in the transportation aid, like a new building for the bus yard. Equipment outlays about $100,000. We have bus leases banned for bus anticipation note vehicles. So the bus lease and the ban for the vehicles for the buses, those are the types of borrowings we use for financing new purchases of buses. And we have the lease on the SYA building. So that was $860,000 of tax levy exclusions last year. So we can subtract that out of the adjusted number of $27,925,000, which gives us an adjusted prior year levy of $27,065,541. And that's the first half of this calculation. Second half of the calculation now takes into consideration the allowable growth factor. And we've all heard the cap is 2% or CPI, whichever is lower. Well, CPI has been running it somewhere up in the neighborhood of 3.5% for the last several months. So as a result of that, it's fairly safe to assume that the cap is going to be at 2%. So we have an allowable growth factor of 1.02%. We've got the estimated pilot for the new year. So our tax levy limit becomes $27,479,766, and then we've got a whole new group of capital tax levy exclusions. Bond principal now goes from $100,000 to $815,000. We have the first bond principal payment due in 22-23. We've got a building aid estimate of a negative of $8,854, which is deduct. We've got BOCES capital again from East Suffolk BOCES of $35,197, and the same equipment outlays, the ban for vehicles, all factor in here, and the SYA building. So our total capital tax levy exclusion now jumps up to $1,413,498. We also this year for the first year have Trs and Ers exclusions, $100,000 each. So the allowable exemptions is now $1,613,498, giving us a maximum allowable tax levy in 2022-23 of $29,093,264, which is a 5.45% tax levy increase, or an amount of $1,504,109. Factoring all of that now in, again, the rollover of the appropriation side of the budget, you can see this on the left, proposed for 2022-23. The budget for 2021-22 is on the right, and the percentage change between the two. And again, almost every single line that has an increase had something in there that was being covered by last year's pandemic relief. The debt service, as we said, really jumped from $726,000 to $1,263,000. And again, that's a known and it's a planned number going up. The other item that was fairly large was equipment, and it increased by $62,500, and that was for some computer and electronic purchases that were being paid for out of one of the grants last year. And I just left that in for this year as a full amount again. We'll take a look at it in more detail going forward. Our contractual and our supplies, $1.4 million and $457,000, both are increased. Supplies increased by almost 20%, whereas the contractual increased by 3.58. So you've got a proposed expense budget now of $33,231,832 versus last year's budget of $30,801,134, is a 7.9% budget to budget increase. On the revenue side, we don't know what the state aid numbers are. We won't know that until probably towards the end of January, beginning of February. We're looking at the different students that we bring into Springs, and we charge tuition to other districts. We had one last year. I left one for this year, so the number didn't change. The pilots are the same as they were last year. We have not gotten the new numbers from the town. Interest income stays about the same. Medicaid reimbursements, I left those the same, as well as other various revenue sources. So our tax levy then results in a tax levy of $30,020,853 versus last year's levy of $27,589,155, which is an 8.81% tax increase, and compared to the tax cap of 5.45%. And all of those, that tax levy number is predicated on the fact that the fund balance numbers you see below for the appropriated, the ERS reserve and the repair reserve, which totals $935,000 and change, is the same as it was last year. And unless, we'll be looking at in January, start running out the fund balance estimates and all of that kind of stuff, just to see if any of those numbers change. To the extent any of these revenue items other than the tax levy go up, the tax levy would go down. So that's the short of it in the budget summary for revenues and expenses and fund balance. And I've only got two other slides here. One here is just to give you an idea of the debt service. And these, like I said, these debt service items to show you, 2020 capital project, $715,000 is this year's principal, 2022-23's principal payment. That's already contractually obligated to 20 and going out 20 years. And I have a number every year for 20 years, what that principal cost is going to be and the related interest against those bonds all the way out. The bus bands, I've done the same thing, basing it on keeping the bus band or the bus purchases at a level of about $135,000, so that by the time we get out to 24-25, you'll see that the payments of principal on the buses is going to be $135,000, and every year a new layer falls off as we put a new layer on. So it will stay the same at $135,000 as long as we continue to have the voters approve a bus purchasing plan of roughly $135,000 each year. And the band interest is estimated out mostly at 2%, although for the current year, coming into 22-23, that band interest that we issued back in November was not 2%, it was 0.39%. So we got an unbelievably good rate on those bands. Doesn't really amount, it's a few $1,000s, but hey, every penny helps. Last item is my estimate of where we're going with the tuition. This is just a real rough estimate on tuitions with East Hampton. As you know, we've got 3 different categories of student that we get charged tuition on. We call it the regular ed students, the hybrid students, those are students that require some services, and then the special ed students that get more than 60% service. The discounted rates you see at $24,113, $42,923, and $66,931. The first and the last one, the regular ed and the special ed, on the contract, we go out to 24-25. Those numbers are locked in each year. The one number that does change slightly each year is the hybrid. We have to wait for East Hampton to do their calculation based on the salaries of the teachers and other staff that service the students that need these extra services in order to determine what that composite tuition rate would be. So based on that, my real rough and dirty quick look at the tuition for East Hampton shows an 8.16% increase over last year, going up to $9.7 million as opposed to just over $9 million. Okay. Any questions?
Mike, is that from our current increase in students this year that you're showing that significant jump?
I am going from, yes, it's going, I'm bringing it up to 350 students in total.
Okay.
As you can see, the 21-22, we're at roughly looks like 338 students there. And I've just increased it to 350 and left it at 350 going outward.
Okay. I mean, I feel like I don't have a lot of questions right now because I feel like we still need to wait and see exactly what's going on. So I guess my question I have right now is, when is our first actual budget meeting? I forget when that is.
I think it's the beginning of, it's probably the beginning of February, because right now we've got our work to do to start assembling all the data numbers. Christine and Kristen will be meeting with some of the teachers to kind of formulate what they want programmatically. And then we've got to try to cost that out. We're going to need the better, pretty much all of January to be able to do all of that. I'd have to go back and double check the calendar. But, you know, I guess the key thing here is I'm looking for some sort of feeling from the board, whether or not they're okay with piercing the cap, even if it's just a little, or do they want to stay at the cap, or do they want us to fight and push and try to cut things to go under the cap? Remember, we're at a point right now, we've been so thin and we've really pared down and trimmed down the tax levies the last 3 years, and been way under our maximum tax cap, that at some point we were going to hit a bubble. And I think we're at that bubble. After this, we're not going to have any room to really cut any fat out of the budget, because there is no fat. And what we're going to end up doing, in order to make these savings, we may have to seriously consider cutting some programs. But that's the bubble we're facing, and that's some of the decisions we have to make.
Mike, it's good information. It's a little too soon to really get that direction from us as a board. We need a chance to really look over and talk about it. But again, it's good information. I think it's good information for the public to have right now, to see where we are, where we've been and where we're going. But we, you know, it's really, it's going to take us the time to come to that realization about
it. Yeah. Yeah, so I think at this point then, what I'm going to recommend to Deb and to the other administrators is that we put a budget together and we put our best foot forward and say, here's what we really need for the students. This is where we think we need to go. So the first pass when we come back to you may be a lot higher than you think it needs to be. And at that point, you can give us the guidance, how much you want us to trim it and cut it.
Yeah, it would be good to get some information on all this grant money and federal aid. And I know we're still waiting to hear a lot on all that.
But we just got the approvals on most of the pandemic, on almost all of our grants that were out there that we were waiting for. Just within the last week or so, we got the final approvals, including the big pandemic relief grant. So what Julie and Kelly have already started doing is trying to reclassify certain expenses that we took in the general fund as a temporary holding spot, and we can now transfer it over to the special aid fund for those grants. And we're going to start looking at, we've got, like I said, the pandemic relief, we took a lot, we trimmed about, I want to say roughly 10% of teacher salaries and staff salaries, not just teachers, but all staff salaries, and moved it over to be covered by the pandemic relief grant. So we've got some reclassifications to do this year, and it's going to give us a better picture, a better idea of where our estimated fund balance could be. So it's going to take us the better part of January to really pull a lot of those numbers together and have something a little more concrete for you to look at.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because, you know, any permanent expenses that we're going to be responsible for after all that grant money is gone is problematic.
It is, yeah. Once we get some more pandemic relief grant money.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I'm hoping to stay under the cap, so that I mean, that's what I'm shooting for. But I agree with everybody else that it's really early to start having this conversation.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, Mike, thank you very much. Okay, we've already had our LTV conversation about figuring out another way to set up our meeting. So at this time, we are open for public commentary number 2. If anybody has something that they would like to call into the board about, the phone number should be up there on LTV.
And we have no callers on the line at this time.
Okay. I'll just wait a little minute because otherwise we are ready to adjourn our meeting. So I'll give anybody another minute to call in. And it doesn't look like we have any takers at this time.
Hey, Mike, I had a quick question. On the first page of that presentation on the peer summary, what does it mean when it says low income percentage of enrollment? Because I just look at it compared to like East Hampton, and that number just seems odd to me.
Yeah, the problem is, we were looking at that earlier today as well. A lot of these other school districts historically have had parents fill out the free and reduced lunch that provide the low income percentages for the district. We have never had much success with that. So we think that, it says that 4.5% of our families are low income. We already know that that's not necessarily true. But we're trying to grapple with how do we get the right number.
Yeah, I mean, Deb, isn't this a conversation that you're trying to talk to Fred Thiel about and trying to see what opportunities might be for our district to maybe get some help?
Here's what we discussed today. Many districts are not requiring the forms any longer. They're giving breakfast and lunch every day free of charge to all their students. We can't even apply for that because we don't have a cafeteria. So that's my question to the attorneys is, how are they now meeting that threshold for low income if nobody's filling out the forms because everyone's getting free breakfast and lunch? Before, it was based on those forms, but not anymore. So Mike's going to do some work with his colleagues, the business officials. I am asking the attorney the question. We've got to bring that number up. We know. I mean, this community has come together to help hundreds of families this holiday season. We did it for Thanksgiving. We know that the need is there. We just don't have the paperwork to back it up.
When we have students who go to the high school, do they fill that out there? And if so, does East Hampton benefit from that, or do we?
No, East Hampton benefits from it, but East Hampton right now has got free breakfast and lunch every day. That's how we're getting our lunches right now. We don't pay the general store for those lunches for kids. A bus driver picks up the lunches every day and brings them over for us.
Well, I mean, it seems like, again, in a sending school district, that if your students in the high school who are registering as financially needing that information should be reflected upon the sending district.
But right now, everybody is getting it. So that I don't know how they're discerning who is eligible and who's not eligible.
I mean, can we ask for that information without actually providing the lunch? If we had this, do you meet certain kind of income and encourage people to respond to that? Or does the state, if you're not actually giving lunch and breakfast to people, do they not consider that information?
I think they would consider the information in the past. They would consider the information if you had the forms filled out. Last year, we sent the form home to everybody with a personalized letter from me asking, please, this helps with grants, this helps with state aid. We got a handful back.
Right.
You know, people don't want to share that information and people are afraid to share the information. So we didn't, you know, we sent it to everybody. I mean, it's always good to send letters to everybody, put, you know, please do not forward. So if the letters come back, we know that there might be a residency issue. So it's always good to send something by mail. But we only got a handful back.
Yeah.
But there's got to be another way, Barbara, because as I said, most districts are getting free and reduced lunch for every student today.
Right.
But it does hurt us. I can't even apply for certain grants because we don't meet the threshold.
So, all right. Well, thank you very much for that, Deb. And if we're ready, we can adjourn the meeting. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Second, Tim, seconding, all in favor? Aye. All right.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody.